This is my keyword outline, and I'm going to put it right here. Okay. How gray area thinking saved my mental health. Growing up, my parents, like most others, taught me about morality. They taught me right from wrong and good from bad. They taught me that cleaning up after myself was right and that stealing somebody else's crayons was wrong. Back then, everything was super simple and easy, and almost every decision fell into those two categories. I figured that it would stay that way, honestly, most of my life. And then when I started getting into high school, I felt that my decisions sometimes weren't either. They were somewhere in between. And so it was really difficult for me to make decisions because I didn't feel like they were into either category, right or wrong. When I started at Texas A&M, I finally started to rethink the way I thought about the world and found that categorizing decisions into two categories isn't the right way to go about it. Not long after I began my education at A&M, I realized that I was putting way too much weight onto my decisions. I thought every decision I made was going to have this huge, significant impact on my life and the person that I was going to be. I never considered circumstantial differences or that sometimes right has a different meaning to different people. I was convinced that everything was just one way or the other. Because I thought this way, I was constantly judging myself and others around me. I started to question everything I wanted. Was it right for me to have a soda or should I have a water? Was it right for me to get into a relationship at that time? I was questioning everything, and it was a detriment to my mental health. Well, as I got farther into college, my mental health began to deteriorate rapidly, and I realized that I wasn't in the right headspace. It took me a bit to understand that my mental health was suffering from the way I thought about the world. I had been judging every single action I'd ever taken and holding it to this impossible standard. I would have a terrible day and I would still go home and push myself to do extra work, and I would just throw myself into studying and then be so tired by the end of it that I would just crash. I had to teach myself that it was okay to not be right all the time and that it was okay to take breaks. A lot of the times, I didn't really want to take a break or just sit and chill with my friends because I thought that I would have to admit that I was losing my grip on success by doing so. It took me a really long time to realize that it was okay to let myself go occasionally, because not everything is right or wrong and defined by those two words. And that's where the gray area comes in. The gray area is that gap between right and wrong, or black and white if you want to look at it that way. It's like a spectrum. There's this area between black and white that is gray, and that's where things can fall into. In your life, there have to be a million different times where you felt like you were stuck between a rock and a hard place. Usually that's an issue because your two choices aren't very clearly right or wrong. Otherwise, that would be a really easy choice if one of them was obviously right. Once I allowed myself to start thinking this way, I felt my worldview become a lot more optimistic. By thinking with this new open-minded mindset, I found that making decisions was much less daunting. When it came time to make a decision, I would really center myself around what I needed in my life at that moment. Previously, I was always worried about what people in my life would think, like what my mom or my dad or, my friends, people in my life would think. Then I began to make decisions based on my needs and my circumstances. I began to listen to more people's decisions and perspectives on life and how they thought about the world. This started to alter the way I saw it as well and helped me become more open-minded to others. I'm glad to say it's been quite a long time since I put an unearthly amount of pressure around a decision or an action. Thankfully, this new approach has significantly improved my mental health and showed me that not everything in life is able to fit into those two categories, good and bad, or black and white, or right and wrong. That black and white thinking can get you into an unhealthy headspace that makes you feel like nothing you do is right and that you're constantly failing. It feels like life is more difficult than it actually is, and you put a lot of pressure on yourself unnecessarily. Gray area thinking helps you embrace who you are and that it's okay to not always be perfect. Letting society determine whether my decisions were right or wrong was mentally exhausting. And when I began to realize that decision making is circumstantial, I became a much happier person and consequently a much better friend to those around me.